By now, most people are aware that the lack of American heavy armor in World War II was primarily due to the desire to keep up production numbers of the Sherman tank and avoid disrupting supply lines of them and their parts. Even when German Tiger and Panther tanks began to roll out onto the battlefield, America seemingly never countered with new designs of their own, unlike Britain or the Soviets. War Thunder players may know this isn't entirely true, but for everyone else, it's incredibly unlikely to have heard about America's late-war heavy tank programs. Even the Pershing is usually only a footnote. But today I'm here to shed some light on designs that not only match the Tiger II, but surpass it as a far more terrifying vehicle. When Tiger IIs were first spotted in 1944, it did not escape American officers that these new tanks packed more armor and firepower than any previously known German tank. Even Panthers looked average in comparison. The Sherman was dutifully keeping up its role and purpose as an inexpensive medium tank, but it was understood that should the war continue to go on, and especially after the war, that the Sherman would need a fast replacement. Therefore, designers set out to create a tank that would match the armor and firepower of the Tiger II, so that America would have something with far more presence than a Sherman. Heavy Tank T-29 was born. Designers turned to the recently developed M26 Pershing as a starting template, specifically the T26E3, which used VVSS suspension and an electrical transmission. The chassis was extended by 2 road wheels, and additional armor was added up to the front, 4 inches sloped at 54 degrees. The extra space in the rear of the vehicle allowed designers to replace the engine with a 750 horsepower Ford GAC engine, giving it a whopping 11.68 horsepower per ton. The turret was designed with help from an older relative, Heavy Tank M6. Originally considered as the heavy breakthrough tank America would need, it quickly fell to the wayside as the Sherman matched and surpassed it in nearly every capability. But the M6 would see a second life as the perfect testbed for the new turret for the heavy tank project. As the T-29 was experiencing delays in its production, Army staff proposed mounting the prototype T-29 turret on the M6. This turret was designed to mount a T5 105mm high-velocity gun, and featured up to 7.5 inches of armor on the front of the turret. Eventually, this was changed to the more powerful T5E1 gun, which used 2-piece ammunition. The turret was further redesigned. As with most US tanks, the gun would be able to traverse -10 degrees downwards and 20 degrees upward. A second prototype was created, this time able to mount an even bigger 155mm high-velocity gun. Unfortunately for the M6, by this time engineers were beginning to finalize the T-29, and combined with an increasing load on the M6 chassis, it was finally retired as a testbed, but had served its purpose valiantly, and the new turret was prototyped and finished. The Army now had 2 promising designs based on 2 different turrets created, one with a 105mm gun and one with a 155mm gun. Armor on the turret reached a whopping 11 inches, 12 on the mantlet, which far surpassed the 7 inches on the Tiger II. The T5E1 gun had a caliber of 66, thanks to its increased length, compared to the Tiger II's 71 caliber, but while its muzzle velocity was slower, the increased size allowed it to pierce nearly 350mm of steel at 500 meters, compared to the mere 200 or so of the Tiger II's. The T-29 had very respectable speed and mobility, able to reach speeds of 22 miles per hour. It could cross trenches almost 8 feet in width, and wade through almost 4 feet of water safely. If need be, it could climb steps of 3.5 feet and easily climb 30-degree slopes. With the design of the T-29 nearly finalized, the Army put out an order of 1,152 vehicles to be produced, but by the end of the war, only a single production vehicle had been completed. Even so, the Army saw value in them as a post-war testbed, and so an additional 7 were procured. Some versions of this featured coincidence rangefinders, sometimes referred to as mouse ears. Before we discuss its post-war service, I want to discuss its 2 relatives, the T-30 and T-34. T-30 was developed alongside the T-29, and so is nearly identical except for the gun, which is the 155mm T-7E1. Developed specifically for the Breakthrough program, this gun fired 2-piece ammunition which was loaded with assistance from a spring rammer. It was one of the largest guns ever fitted to an American tank, and its turret was equally massive. It had to accommodate 6 people, one of whom was standing. While it shared a diameter with the 155mm long Tom artillery, the gun carried a standard loadout of APC-BC, HVAP, HE, and smoke shells. A T-30E1 was developed, which featured a semi-autoloader to attempt to improve the reload of the gun, which thanks to the 40-pound weight of the shell, was at best 2 rounds per minute. A true successor to the T-29 was heavy tank T-34. Seemingly for fun, the Ordnance Department experimented with mounting a 120mm gun in the turret of the T-29. This extra weight necessitated that an armored plate be welded to the back of the turret. They found the gun had both a higher penetration compared to the 105mm gun, and better velocity compared to the 155mm gun. These tests were successful, and the first T-34s were produced in 1947. It was found that powder gases kept leaking into the turret, so an aspirator-type bore evacuator was installed, giving the barrel the characteristic look it has. The T-34 was found to be too heavy, and so was eventually redeveloped into heavy tank M103, but by then was indisputably an entirely different tank. And so the lives of these 3 tanks, the T-29, T-30, and T-34, came to a somewhat satisfying end for a prototype American tank. They were developed to counter German armor at the end of the war, but found purpose in being the first of a new generation of post-war tank technologies, ranging from the Pershing-esque T-32 to the patent-mounted M103. Technologies first developed for these tanks were eventually used to outfit many MBTs and heavy tanks of the Korean era, and today, surviving examples of these tanks can be found in several locations across America, such as Fort Knox, Kentucky, and Fort Benning, Georgia. If you enjoyed this overview of the heavy tank program, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future War Thunder and historical content.